My name is Lauren. I'm 42. And what happened between me and Jake, someone I thought I could completely open up to, still lingers in my mind like an unfinished song. We weren't new to each other. Jake had been in my life for almost a year, and in that time we'd grown past the surface-level flirtations into something deeper. We were both cautious at first, both carrying the weight of past missteps and quiet disappointments. But with Jake, I felt like maybe I could finally let my guard down. There was something in his presence that made me feel steady again. The night he came over, I wasn't planning to say anything dramatic. I had lit a few candles, let some soft music play in the background. Nothing too obvious, just a quiet invitation. The air between us had always been gentle, slow burning. That night it felt even heavier, more filled with possibility. When he walked into my room, I watched the way his eyes took it all in. He didn't speak at first, he just looked. Me. The space. Like he was waiting for something. His backpack dropped near the door with a familiar thud, and he smiled when our hands brushed for a second too long. Talk. About his day. About the annoying customer who kept mispronouncing his name at the coffee shop. About how cold it had suddenly gotten that week. I listened, laughed at the right parts, and watched his face in those quiet pauses. And when it was my turn to speak, I didn't hesitate. I've been thinking about what I want, I said, my voice steady. He leaned in, a soft curiosity in his eyes. Yeah. Not in a dramatic way, I smiled. Just, I want us to stop guessing. I don't want halfway. I want to be able to say what feels good, what doesn't, when I want more or less. And I want you to feel safe doing the same. He didn't flinch. Didn't blink too much. He just nodded like that was exactly what he needed to hear too. So I kept going. I don't want us to assume things just because we care. I want us to ask. To tell each other. To be sure. His fingers found mine again, and this time he didn't let go. There was nothing rushed. Everything about that moment felt real. Grounded. Honest. Like we were laying a foundation not just for the night, but for something more lasting. And then something shifted. First it was subtle. He changed position, nothing drastic. Just a small move. But it pulled me out of the rhythm. It interrupted something inside me, like a record skipping right at your favorite part of a song. I had just told him what felt right, and yet, now he was doing something else. Something different. I froze. Not outwardly but emotionally. It wasn't that I didn't trust him. I did. But I had finally felt heard. And now I was questioning whether he'd really listened at all. He didn't notice at first. To him it probably felt natural, like the next step. But to me it was too soon. Too offbeat. I wasn't angry. Just unsettled. I stayed quiet, watching him, waiting to see if he'd notice the shift too. And then he looked at me, and I think he did. There was a flicker in his expression, a question he didn't say out loud. So I did. I told you exactly what I needed, I whispered, not accusingly. Just gently. Jake sat back, thoughtful. I thought I was doing it right, he said slowly. You were, I nodded. Until you weren't. That could have been a moment where things fell apart. But it wasn't. It was a moment of choice. A moment to either push through blindly or pause and learn. Jake didn't defend himself. He didn't argue. He just asked, "Where did I lose you?" And that changed everything. I told him that when I opened up, I wasn't just sharing preferences. I was handing him a part of me. Part one didn't give away easily. And when he moved on too quickly, it wasn't just about the physical shift. It was emotional. Felt like he stopped being present with me. Like he decided what came next instead of waiting for us to get there together. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I thought I was supposed to change something. Make it better." "It already was better," I replied softly. "That's why I asked you not to change it yet." Jake let out a long breath, like he finally understood the weight of what I was saying. "I wanted it to be perfect." "You don't have to be perfect," I said. "You just have to stay with me. Right where we are." He nodded slowly. And then something in him shifted again, but this time in the right direction. He reached for my hand, slower now, more intentional. And I felt it. He wasn't just touching me. He was returning to the moment. Everything that followed felt different. His pace, his attention, the way he waited for my cues, not to perform but to connect. Every pause was filled with awareness, not awkwardness. He was present, truly present, and it made the room feel whole again. I started whispering the little things I liked. Where to stay, when to slow down. And every time he listened. Not with obedience but with care. With presence. I noticed how his touch changed. How he started reading not just my words, but my breath, the small tilt of my shoulders, the unspoken signals. He didn't miss them anymore. That overwhelmed me in the best way. It reminded me how rare it is to be seen like that. Not just observed but truly felt. For the first time I wasn't just reacting. I was responding. Because he had stopped guessing. He was listening. There was no need to fill the silence after that. The quiet between us wasn't empty. It was safe, full of trust. He looked at me with a kind of calm focus I hadn't seen before. It wasn't about impressing me anymore. It was about showing up for me completely. And that meant more than anything else. I leaned into him and whispered, "That's it." He smiled, not proudly but gently, as if he understood that connection doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from those tiny moments where someone chooses to stay instead of rush ahead. Where they choose to feel instead of assume. We stayed like that for a while. His hand in mine. The air quiet around us. And I knew then that love doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's in how someone returns to you after a misstep. In how they recalibrate. In how they choose you, not in theory but in action. Jake hadn't gotten everything right the first time. But he cared enough to stop, to ask, and to listen. And that was everything. Because love doesn't grow through perfection. It grows in the pauses. In the listening. In the coming back. And in that quiet space between what I said and what he learned, we found something real.